So before we start coding, let's take some time to set up your dev environments and learn a bit about some of the tools that you'll be using. So first we'll need to make sure that Git is installed. So I'll explain Git later, but you can find the installation instructions here. You'll need it for the workshop later, and if you need any help, just raise your hand and one of the staff will come and help you. Okay. So hopefully while that's going, you also need a text editor. So this can be Sublime or Atom or Notepad++. It really doesn't matter which one you use. It's really up to personal preference. So most of us prefer to use Sublime. Just a note, please don't use Microsoft Word. A word processor is great for writing papers, but not so much for coding. It's kind of like trying to turn a screw with a pair of pliers. I mean, you can do it, but it's really much more painful than necessary. So yeah, use a text editor. Text editors also provide really helpful tools like color coding. Meanwhile, Microsoft Word complains that you're not using grammar properly. But that makes sense because you're not coding. You're coding, right? So, yeah.
How much for the install test?
Need it? Okay. Yeah, you should install it. So while he's writing that down, so hopefully all this stuff is installing or being installed. Let's talk about the command line. So this is AKA how to be an elite hacker, more or less. So just a note to Windows users, some of these commands might not work for you because it's slightly different from the normal Unix command line. Yeah, so I'll make sure to point out which ones these are and their Windows counterparts. But you really should use something called git bash. This comes in installed with your Git installation, and it uses the commands that I'm going to talk about later. Yeah. So the first thing about terminal is that don't be afraid of it. You can think of it sort of like programmatically traversing your file system with Finder or Windows Explorer, but typing instead of clicking on things. So let's look at some of the commands that you'll probably be using. So the first one is pwd, and this stands for print working directory. And as you can imagine, it just tells you where you are currently in the file system. So the analog for this in Windows is cd. This is a little confusing, but don't worry about it. So the next command that you might find useful is ls, and this stands for list. This just lists the names of the files and directories in the current location where you are. You can also make it list more other information like owners, permissions, and file sizes by adding something called flag. So this new command is ls-l. I know that was kind of like a one. That's unfortunate. Anyway, so this -l part is called the flag, and you can sort of think of it as an extension of this original ls command. And as you can see, it lists the file name, some more information like the owner and some permission stuff. Yeah. So the Windows command for ls is dir, which stands for directory. That's dir. Don't worry about it too much. So you can even make okay, so this is the equivalent, basically. So you can even make directories inside the terminal using the make dir command. So you pass it in the name of the directory that you want. So in this case, it's new_dir, and then it just creates the directory for you. So this is kind of like the new folder button. Think that. Okay, so the last thing that you'll need to know how to do is navigate around the file system from your terminal. And you can do this using the cd command, and this stands for change directory. So as you can see, we have a new_dir directory in our current directory. So we cd into it, and then if you ls, you can see that we're in this new location. So one thing that's not, here's the equivalent. You just click on the folder. So one thing that's not immediately obvious is how to go up a level. To do that, you do cd space ... And that just goes up a level, as you can see in this example here. So that's just like going backwards up the file system. So the cool thing about terminal is that you can also use autocomplete. So if you have a really long directory name and you need to cd into it, if you start typing cd and then the first couple letters of your long directory name and then you press tab, it will just autocomplete for you, which is super convenient. At least I think so. And another thing that you should know about terminal is that sometimes in installation instructions, you'll see things that are like cd /2/file or set-email and then your email in angle brackets at example.com. So these are just placeholders. You're meant to fill it in with your actual email or your actual path to file. So just use your best judgment here. Okay. So sometimes, so these are just the basics of terminal. There are many other commands that you can use, and like hundreds of extensions that you can use. There's even one that prints a steam locomotive to your terminal window if you mistype something. Yeah, just Google for it, you'll find it. And if you have any other questions about commands, you can just Google for it, or ask us, or look at the manual page. Okay, so now let's talk about Git. This is how to not go crazy while working on a project with 2 other people. So let's just say for starters that I'm working on a project report by myself. So I'll write some stuff and I'll save it to this doc file. And now I'll make some more edits, and now we have project report 2. And now I find that's over the word limit, so project report 3. And now I'll show it to my writing advisor, and we have project report final, and so on. How many of you have seen this before? So it'd be great if we could have just one file, and then just keep track of our history somewhere else, where you don't have to see this messy project report final V2 things, part 5, whatever it is. So this is what Git is for. Git is called the version controller, and it keeps track of your history for you. So you don't have to have all these crazy files, and you can jump backwards in time to previous versions without too much trouble. Yeah. So Git also helps you stay synchronized with your teammates and lets you all work off of the same files at the same time. So you could use Dropbox or email your files together to each other to stay in sync, but you'll run into a lot of problems. So you have to be careful not to overwrite each other's files. So the best thing about Git is that it does this automatically. So say that Alan and I are working on a project together and we're using Dropbox, even though we shouldn't be. So we both download this file that we're using. And Alan makes some changes and he pushes to Dropbox. Okay, so now I make some other changes and try to push to Dropbox, and what happens? Well, Dropbox says, I don't know what to do. So it creates something called a conflicted copy. And this happens even if we modify different parts of the file. So say if I make some changes to the top of the file, like I add the line at the top, and Alan adds a line to the bottom, even though our changes don't intersect, Dropbox says, well, I give up, you figure it out. So Git does this automatically. It'll try to automatically merge these files together. So you don't have to worry about figuring out what did Alan change and what did I change, and try to put those together in the same file. So yeah, like I said before, you can use Dropbox, but it'll make it a lot more painful for yourself than it could be. So all the commands I'm about to tell you about only work in special directories that you have to set up to tell Git to track. And this is compared to terminal commands, which work everywhere. So to make Git track a directory, you use the git init command. And this, what it does is it creates a .git hidden directory inside your current directory. And this is where all the Git history and Git information is stored. So whatever you do, don't delete this directory, or it'll be really sad later. Okay. So now let's go through a bit of the Git workflow. So let's say you have a bunch of files that you make changes to, and you only want to share some of them with your teammates. So say that orange is some new feature that I'm working on, and apple and banana aren't really done yet, so I'm going to wait before I expose them to my teammates. So to pick which files that you want to show to your teammates, you use the git add command. And in this case, we would do git add orange. And it would just prepare this file and say, this is ready to be added to my history. And it adds it to something called a staging area. So after you finish picking which files you want, you have to commit them. So, and this means you package them nicely into a git commit. To make sure you remember what changes were made, you have to add a message that describes what changes you just did. And this -m here is a flag, and it just means message. So if you run git commit without this flag, it'll open up a text editor in your terminal, and this can be kind of annoying if you don't know how to use it. So just quit it and try committing again. Okay, so now that you've committed, and this means that you saved a record of your change inside the Git history on your local computer, you have to make it visible to everyone who you're working with. And this is done through the git push command. So what it does is it takes your local changes that you just made and puts it on GitHub. GitHub is just a place in the cloud where it stores a copy of your code. So now that you made this change, you want your teammates to be up to date with you. So what you do is you run git pull. And this takes the changes that you just made on GitHub and puts it on your local computer, or the computers of all your friends, I guess. So Git does its best to automatically merge in the changes that you just made with someone else's code. And sometimes it happens that Git doesn't really know what to do if you both change the same line. So for example, say that Al and I are working together and we're using GitHub this time. So we both have this file that says hello world. Okay? So Al makes a change. He changes world to 6148, and then he pushes to GitHub. So now GitHub has the same code as he does, and everything's cool. Now I'll make a different change. I'll add an exclamation mark to our line here and try to push to GitHub. But something doesn't go right. Git kind of complains. So the first thing that happens is that I'm not up to date with the most current version on GitHub. So Git says, oh, you're not up to date. You need to run git pull. So this looks kind of scary, but this is the line that you really care about. It's just telling you to run git pull before you push. So let's say I run git pull. There's another problem. So this also looks kind of scary, but it's not. It's called the merge conflict. And this is what happens when Git doesn't really know how to combine your changes together. So as you can see here in this conflict content merge conflict in hello.txt, all it's saying is that you have a conflict in hello.txt. You need to fix it yourself because I'm not sure how to do it. So what you do is you open up all files where this conflict occurs. So in our case, it's just hello.txt. So if we open that file, it looks like this. Again, looks kind of scary, but you don't have to worry too much. I'll break it down for you. So the top part is just showing what's on your local computer. So this is the code that you have. And the bottom part is showing what the code is on GitHub. So this is what the code is on the cloud. And it's saying, I'm not sure which one you want, so can you merge it for me? And what you do is you delete everything between the angle brackets, and you replace it with what you want. So if I wanted both my changes and Alan's changes, I would just delete this whole block and then just replace it with what I want. So now that I've done that, I can do git add this file, and then git commit, and then finally I can push, and it will be successful. So now there are a few other commands that you may find useful for Git work. So the first one is git status. And this sort of tells you what's going on with your Git directory currently. So some of the most important information here is the top part here, which tells you what changes that you've added. So these changes are the ones that you said, okay, I'm ready for these to be saved in my history. The next part is right here, and these are the changes that aren't ready to be saved in history. So in our original example, if you can remember, the changes that we were ready to commit was the orange file, and then the changes that were not ready to be committed were our apple and banana file. So, yeah. Okay. So if you want to see the differences between your current directory and so if you want to see the changes between your current directory and the one you just changed, so like the changes that you just made, you can run git diff. And what this does is it goes through all the files inside your Git directory, and it tells you, okay, you added this line, or you deleted this line, or whatever. So as you can see, each one of these is a file, and the minus sign with the red font color tells you that you just deleted this line, and then the green tells you that you added this line. So it gives you like a bird's eye view of what stuff you changed. Yeah. Okay. So now, if you want to look at the history of the commits that you just the commits you made, you can use git log. So this lists the commits in your current directory in reverse chronological order. So from the most recent to the earliest one. So each one of these is a commit, and it tells you some useful information about this commit, like who made it, the date, and the commit message. So it tells you sort of what's going on and what the change is. So the last command that you'll need is git clone. And what this does is it takes a repository on GitHub, and it copies over to your local computer so you can start working on it. So these are just a few basic Git commands for you to get started, but it should be enough for maybe 90% of the work that you're going to be doing. If you still need help with setting up Git, raise your hand and we'll come help you. We may or may not have a more advanced lecture about other stuff later. Yeah, so office hours today are at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. from 32-044. There may or may not be food, I don't know. And we have a workshop. So here it runs through some setup with SSH keys, which you'll need for working with MIT GitHub. It should explain things fairly well, but if you need help, come ask us. Yeah, thanks guys.